every year, we ask someone that we truly admire to come on stage to talk about their career, the things that they have done successfully, maybe the mistakes they've made. And for the last few years, we've been, seriously honored and blessed to have the pleasure to work with and know and be friends with the unbelievable Jamel Shabazz, who is probably not just a wonderful photographer, but an amazing human and just a very generous person. One of the reasons why we asked Jamel is because he's successfully, after many years, by the way, but really successfully been able to merge his personal street photography with commercial work. And he's doing it his way, and I thought, who best to kind of talk about his experiences than Jamel? So I'm going to stop talking because you all want to hear from him. So Jamel Shabazz, everybody.
Thank you very much. Laura, excuse me. Come on, come back here, girl. Thank you. I just want to take this opportunity before I start to acknowledge Laura, Sam, and Dave, and the whole UPI family for creating Photoville. Photoville has been in existence now for 7 years. It has created an incredible platform for photographers around the world, and I'm so grateful for 3 individuals that work so tirelessly, with such great dedication to produce this event. So I just want to take this time and acknowledge you and pass on this gift to you that represents what your organization does. It's one of the most important photographs I've taken in my life, and it represents what your organization is about. And I said I have to start my presentation first by honoring someone and an organization that is doing so much for the community. It's small because I know you don't have a lot of space. So I said, let me make something small for you so you can fit it. But this photograph is very important.
I'm going to, oh man. I know. I love, this is my favorite.
I know it is. So what this photograph represents, I call it hope and promise. And it was shown in her exhibition, in her gallery for the very first time. And it just represents what I feel and what the family is doing. They are bringing people together in such a critical time, and they're creating a vision for the next generation. So I just wanted to just express my gratitude by sharing that with you and for the UPI family.
Thank you. We're going to put this up.
Okay, you're welcome. Okay. Okay, thank you. Thank you all for coming out. It's truly an honor and privilege. I would have never imagined some 40 years ago that I would be facing a crowd and having a conversation. My work is all about making a contribution, as I always say, for the preservation of world history and culture. That's my purpose in life, and I'm very grateful that at this stage I've come to understand what my purpose in life is. I'm so grateful for having the ability to see. So I always like to start off with the gratitude for being able to have vision when I think about people who can't see. So in having this divine gift of vision, I try to use it to create images to perhaps make the world a better place. So it's just so much to say right now. But I want to speak about gratitude. And that's important to me because I would not be here today if it wasn't for so many people who helped to build the foundation which I stand on right now, including Laura, Sam, Dave, Powerhouse Books for having the faith in me to produce 7 of my books. So I'm so grateful for the Powerhouse family for believing in my vision and allowing me to produce my first book back in the days that provided me with a foundation, which will become the cornerstone for which I stand on today. I'm grateful for all the writers that took the time to write about my work, all the publishers that saw my vision, the creative individuals that hired me to work on different projects. So I'm here for them. And I just want to just thank everybody, who's ever taken an opportunity to support me in that manner. Support is so key, and gratitude is important to have that. So I'm just honored to be here in your presence. So do bear with me as I collect my thoughts. I woke up this morning thinking about the evolution of the butterfly and how it evolved from the stage of a caterpillar and how it slowly evolves into this butterfly and it takes off. And I looked at my life in that fashion, going back to being a young child growing up in Brooklyn during the 1960s, the height of the Vietnam War and the Civil Rights Movement, a time that really helped to shape me as a young child who was curious of the world around me. Here I am crawling around and observing and trying to understand, what's going on through photographs. And it was something because the images that I saw in Life magazine and Time magazine, they helped to give me a better understanding on the world around me. I'm 8, 9 years old at this time, and my father had a series of magazines and books on his coffee table. And as a young child, I would look at these books trying to understand what was going on. And I drew so much inspiration in looking at these photographs. And it's something, because the images in which I was seeing, I wasn't being taught this history and work at school. The Vietnam was at its high point, and I'm looking at death and destruction. And at the same time, I'm flipping the pages of these publications and seeing the civil rights movements going on in America. And I'm seeing the power of photography and the language of photography and how images can impact people and feed one's mind. So much of my growth and development over time came from looking at different publications to help to shape me. I'm 9 years old at this time, not realizing that these images are feeding my mind with information that's causing me to grow. It wouldn't be until another maybe 12 years later where I would physically pick up a photograph. But for so many years, I just saw the value of looking at images. You know, from looking at the photographs in my father's home, I would go into the library to look at photographs. And I fell in love with magazines from around the world. I started to look at the German magazine Spiegel. I looked at the Italian magazines. I looked at the French magazines. Even though I didn't understand the language, there was something about those photographs that gave me a broader understanding on what was going on around the world. At the age of 15, I decided to pick up my camera. My mother had a disposable camera laying around the house that was just there with film in it that she would use occasionally, and I decided to take that camera and put it to use. And it was one of the greatest things that happened to me in my life, because in looking at that viewfinder, I became aware of the third eye that I possessed. And it was something about looking in that viewfinder that allowed me to see a world around me that was invisible to a lot of people. And it became something very magical to me. And the camera at that time is equivalent to what a cell phone is to a lot of people today. It was something very special, and it stayed with me every single day. I vowed I would carry and just document the world around me. And I realized in having this camera, I had the ability to make people feel good. I would approach a lot of my peers in junior high school, and now I had a voice, where before I existed, but it was something about the camera that now gave me a voice to communicate with people. I would approach a lot of my peers and tell them how great they are, how beautiful you look, how it's important for me to document you. And then my purpose started to be a little clear. So it's just so much right now. I'm trying to collect my thoughts because I'm speeding at this point. But do bear with me. And at any given point, please feel free to stop me to present a question. But at that early stage in my life, I'm so honored, I'm so grateful that I picked up the camera as a choice of weapons in my life, because it put me on a serious course. Not only did the camera allow me to record history around me, it became like a compass that guided me along the path of life. At the age of 17, I enlisted in the Army to get away from the hardships of life in New York. My parents had divorced, and we were dealing with difficult times. So like a lot of young men my age, you know, we had two options basically, you know, college or the military, and I decided that the military would be my best option at that point. So at the age of 17, I enlisted in the Army. I was stationed in Germany, where I would spend 3 years of my time. And being away, I found the libraries as institutions that continue to feed my mind with images. So when we're not in the field or doing duty, I would go to libraries and continue to look at different magazines to see the beauty of photography. And I promised myself when I return back to the States, I'll never be without memory. So I purchased a Canon AE-1 camera in 1980, and I returned during the summer in 1980, and I came home with the determination to use that camera to create images and have a record of my life. But unbeknownst to me at that time, I came home to a war zone. I came home to a time when a lot of young men were killing each other senselessly. And I had to switch modes now. From wanting to document just for fun and for having a record, I realized now that I needed to use my camera as a microphone to engage young people about violence and engage them about the need to love one another. So now the camera gave me a purpose, and my mission my mission now changed. So I started to travel to different high schools within my community with my camera. I knew a lot of the youth because I grew up with the younger brothers, and I found by having a camera, I was able to communicate with groups of young men and document them. And one of the things I wanted to do was just get them in a circle, because a lot of my photographs are posed, some of them are group shots. It was strategically done that way because I want to have these young men in front of me, and as they decide on what pose to create, it put me in a position to engage them about life, the importance of education, the importance of having a plan, goals and objectives, and it helped me to establish friendships with a lot of individuals. And what surprised me at that time, really later on when my book started coming out, I was photographing enemies to each other. individuals that had conflict with each other. But as a mediator, I was able to use my camera to document all these different groups and bring about a sense of peace. So my mission changed, and I realized that I have to become a concerned photographer. It wasn't about just making pictures for fun. I needed to raise my voice to speak to people about what was going on in society. When I came home from the Army, I became a vegetarian. I read a lot, I played chess, I listened to jazz. I wanted to share everything I had with young people so they wouldn't be like me, with my struggles coming up. So again, the camera became the compass that guided me and gave me a very important voice. A few years later, like most people who go into the military, my father told me to apply for different city jobs, and I applied for a number of them: transit, the post office, the correction department. In the summer of 1983, the Department of Corrections here in New York City hired me, and I would spend 20 years working as a correction officer. I looked at that experience as another aspect of my journey in life. Having the camera now, I took the camera everywhere I went, from the time I was being investigated to my first day on the job to my very last day on the job. I would spend 20 years working in a very negative, harsh reality. And it's photography that gave me a voice, that allowed me to have a sense of balance, to cope with a lot of the violence in which I was dealing with each day. I brought the camera into the jail. I strove to engage young people about the importance of loving one another. I would bring my photographs in often and share them with them to help them see the beauty of life and love. And it made a difference despite all the negativity in which I was dealing with. But the jail helped to really shape and mold me into the man I am, because I became a correction officer when the crack epidemic hit. So I went into a situation where I'm seeing some of the same people I photographed within my community falling victim to that drug. So I had to work extra inside the jail to try to just inspire people. But I'm going to pause at that moment because I'm speeding a little bit, and I'll take a moment to ask a few questions, to answer a few questions. Yes, sir. Yes, I worked at Rikers Island from 1983 to 1987. And then I would transfer to work in different facilities. I worked in drug rehabilitation programs, and I spent 10 years working at Supreme Court, where I spent most of my time working with mental health patients. And that was one of the most rewarding parts of my job, working with the mentally challenged, because it gave me an opportunity to really show empathy and teach empathy to my coworkers who didn't understand mental illness, and at the same time, more importantly, to really help a lot of young men who are wrestling with mental issues. So it was the most rewarding experience of my life in correction, because a lot of individuals that people went away from, I went to. And it helped me to better understand some of the challenges that people go through. And it helped me with my photography, too, in terms of engaging people. Any other questions at this time? Yes.
So when you were first starting to take all these pictures and be active in this community, were you the only photographer, or did you know other ones, or who were coming up with you, or what?
At that time, there was no photographers. I was actually the only one with a camera at that time. But besides older people, in terms of people within my age group, there was no one documenting people at all at that time. Occasionally you had individuals on 42nd Street in the city with Polaroids, but in terms of individuals with 35 millimeters, there was really no one in the area. That's why I have such a large body of work of that area in my community, because no one really saw the value of it at that point.
What did that feel like for you to be in as opposed to now when there's so many
I really can't say right now. It was just my personal assignment, and I just felt grateful to have had that opportunity to be there at that time to record that very important history and impact the lives of individuals. Today, I feel great that so many people have embraced photography as a craft. 20, 30 years ago, the only people that you would see with cameras were tourists. Today, everyone has a camera or some type of telephone with the ability to create images. But I'm going to go and deal with my career right now. And please pardon me, I have so much in my mind. I just came from a show last night, so I'm processing everything that took place last night as I come here today. So do bear with me, please. My photographs will help to tell the story. So I'm going to start from the current and take you back to where I came from. So this is the most recent photo shoot I did. Have an opportunity to document for Essence magazine, a magazine that helped to shape me as a young man coming up in the 1970s, a magazine that my mentor, Gordon Parks, helped to create. So when given the opportunity to photograph the renowned Dapper Dan and Naomi Campbell, it was an honor for me. My images very rarely grace the cover of magazines, so I'm very grateful for Essence, for reaching out to me to create this cover photograph right here. It has gone on to be one of my important images. Right before the Essence shoot, to my surprise, Alicia Keys reached out to this publisher, and she requested that I would be the photographer on set to create this image of her and her husband, Swiss Beats. They have never graced the cover before, so this is their very first time being on the cover of a magazine. So I'm very grateful for Alicia for seeing my vision and having the faith in me to create this remix of a photograph of Kathleen Cleaver and Eldridge Cleaver, and a photograph that Gordon Parks took in 1970. So this has been a game changer for me to have my images on the magazine and have an opportunity, more importantly, to have conversations with young artists. Because it's not about the photograph. The photograph is evidence of a conversation. What's more important for me is to have an opportunity to have conversations with individuals, to see why we met on this path of life. Because I'm a strong believer that we meet for a reason. So this is all a reflection of my journey as that caterpillar in terms of my growth and development. No Ever Lose is a very important magazine that I use as a guide over the many years of my career to help me understand how to write artist statements in addition to introducing me to other photographers. Last year, they provided me with an opportunity to grace their magazine with one of my photographs. So my career has been really elevating over time. I would never have imagined it, because when I was doing it, I did it for myself to actually preserve the history and culture, and at the same time to engage young people. Now having it on magazines, it puts me in a position to inspire the next generation of photographers, hopefully in the manner in which Gordon Parks and James Vanessy inspired me. PDN Magazine is a very important publication, which many call the Bible for photographers. I want to give a shout out to Hallie Block for having faith in me to have my work in this publication, and the whole PDN family itself, because this magazine has really given a lot of enlightenment to a lot of young photographers. So any photographers in the house who don't subscribe to PDN Magazine, I would say to you, it's very important that you have a subscription to support this publication, because there's a wealth of information in it. And it's through this publication which I became a better photographer. This photograph is a representation of me as a young child coming up. At this particular age, it reminds me of my curiosity growing up in Red Hook, just looking at the world outside my neighborhood. So I wanted to start my journey with this particular photograph, because it just represents the curiosity of a child and how we have to feed that curiosity. My father had no idea the impact he had on my life. As a young child, he never told me to read the photography books. He just had them on the tables. And in having them on the table, I picked them up, and they fed my mind. And it was one book here, Black and White America, that he had a signed copy on his coffee table. And we never had a chance to talk about it. It wasn't personalized, it was just signed. And it was something about this book. This is not the original cover, but I decided to use this photograph because this young boy is called Muscle Man. And I realized when I read this book, it gave me a muscle. It gave me power. It gave me ability. But this book would be one of the most important books that I read in my life. And I actually read the book cover to cover at the age of 9. The photographs itself were compelling, but it was something about the writing in the book that really introduced me to a world outside my community. It introduced me to a whole new language that I never knew before. I was introduced to racism through this book here. And I vividly remember reading it and having my dictionary by my side, trying to understand some of the words I was seeing for the first time. Words like rape, integration, segregation, Confederacy, just so many words, that I would get from this book here. And again, I'm reading it, and I'm never telling my parents that I'm reading it, nor do they're not even aware of the fact that I'm studying this book constantly. And subconsciously, a lot of the images and the words will become a part of my character. I saw a protest for the first time. I was introduced to Harlem for the very first time in my life. I saw the segregated South for the first time. I saw signs, no blacks allowed. And it baffled me, but no one fed my mind. I wasn't being taught this information in school. So this book would be the cornerstone of my foundation as a photographer and as a concerned citizen. So I'm very grateful for Leonard Freed and the contributions in which he's made. 1968 was a very serious time for me growing up in the projects of Brooklyn. Of course, the war was going on, and it was something about the Vietnam War, the images that were coming out of that war that just created my curiosity. And this whole Time Life series inspired me so much to want to understand the war. I remember young men in my neighborhood being drafted, going to Vietnam. I remember one young man that died in the Vietnam War in 1967. As a young child, my neighborhood, we recall when the recruiters came, not to recruit as a military personnel, the chaplain, to notify a mother that her son had died in Vietnam. I'm 7 years old at this time, and I'll never forget the screams of that mother as she would find out that her only son died in Vietnam. And that would create my further my curiosity to want to know about the war in Vietnam. And to this day, some of the most important work I created are of Vietnam veterans. So the war is still very close to my heart. I think about it every day. Those that follow me on Instagram, they know that I post images of the war on a regular to remind people of that situation, from those that got drafted unjustly to those who are suffering to this very day behind Agent Orange. And this is the Time Light series. When I came home from the Army and my father saw my curiosity in photography, one of the greatest gifts that he gave me was the Time Light series on photography. And he told me, if you want to learn photography, read these books from cover to cover. And it's from these publications that my understanding of technique, light, aperture, body language all came into play. So I'm grateful for my father for imparting this gift on me, because it became a game changer. And one of the most important publications or series was on themes. And he stressed to me that you have to have themes. You just don't go out there shooting, but when you have a theme, a particular focus, you have greater clarity. So all those life lessons stayed with me. So this photograph represents me coming home from the Army and some of the young men in which I would see in the streets that I would engage. And what was beautiful about my neighborhood, we had a long stretch of an avenue, and I would walk from one point throughout the whole avenue about 3 miles, and I would just see a lot of young men on the corner, and I would just stop them and speak to them about life. And it was something about the groups that made it even special for me, because it gave me a chance to speak to a number of them at the same time, and just speak about, once again, the importance of loving one another, taking care of our community, and preparing for the future. Young men of 17 to probably 21 were like my target, because that was the age group that was dying the most. And sadly, the young man on the far left, he would lose his life. The far right. So these photographs are constant reminders to me. Love was a very important element of my work. I spent a lot of times riding the trains, because it was something about the available light on the trains and the constant subject matters. So this just represents a theme I worked on called The Other Side. And rather than photograph people from the front, I created a whole series where I photographed people from the back. And this particular style was very popular back in the 80s, where couples that loved each other, they were just identical. Another part of The Other Side. And I took a lot of these photographs really just for me. I had no idea that they would turn into a book one day. It was just things, observations I've seen. I just wanted to get a record of my life. Just something basic, just a simple storefront. But all of these photographs right here would make up my first book back in the days. And these photographs right here, many of them were just in photo albums that I just took apart. And I went to Powerhouse with this idea, because I had studied the published Powerhouse books, and I realized that this might be the right publisher for me. So I broke down a lot of my photo albums. I got laser copy prints, and I went to Powerhouse Books with this idea to say that I think that these images might make a good book. But before I went there, some of my partners talked about back in the days. We kept speaking about the 80s and the 70s and how life was. This is back in the late 1990s, and it was this locker room talk. But I realized that my work served as a form of visual medicine. The crack epidemic had hit. A lot of people were dying. They were losing their souls. So now my images became a form of medicine. It became a part of healing. And I realized I needed to get a book out that could perhaps impact society. And I'm grateful that Powerhouse, believed in me and allowed me to publish my first book. And what's interesting, I went to them around September of 2000. And Craig Cohen, who was one of the top people there, told me your book will be out 1 year. On September 11, 2001, my book came out. And I was told that book helped the healing after 9/11. It helped to show another side of New York City. But these photographs represent seconds of my life. Some of them are just mere snapshots, just a part of my visual diary. But I felt the need to produce books because I wanted to share my work. It wasn't about me holding on to these memories. I felt that my work belonged to the people. So in having a book out, an affordable book, perhaps for $35, people can now have a part of the history. And to my surprise, the book back in the days went well. This is a photograph that represents my time on Rikers Island. It's a very important photograph to me because it's my first housing area in which I worked in. I worked with a lot of young men aged 16 to 20 years old. And what was good about this position, it placed me in a position to speak to young men each and every day. So I would walk the floors. It was 2 officers and 60 inmates, 30 on one side, 30 on the other side. And I would go in there, I would use the language of photography to speak to them about life and challenges and obstacles. And I would say that some of my greatest accomplishments in life was having the ability to help change the lives of a lot of men that were incarcerated and help them put them on the right course. So as an officer, oftentimes we have a very negative light in terms of being brutal, but for me, I went in there as a teacher. And again, it was an assignment that I needed to be there for those 20 years to try to impact as many lives as I could. And I'm finding out now through social media that I have, in fact, touched the lives of a lot of young men. I went against the grain and I brought literature to the young men because I felt they needed to read. The administration felt they were animals, they were savages, they don't need to read, they don't need education, they don't need anything, just lock them up and throw away the key. But I couldn't do that because I came from the community. So I brought in knowledge, I brought in books, and I tried to encourage them. I documented my entire 20 years in jail. I've never really shown that work before. I'm slowly introducing it now. So these are 2 photographs from where I worked at. One of my co-workers, because I documented the whole staff, and the mirror image is a young man who was suffering from mental illness. This is the success of back in the days. To my surprise, when the book came out, it became a bestseller. A lot of publications picked up on it. And when I created it, my idea was just to do something for the local community, mainly really Brooklyn. But to my surprise, the book went global, and it touched people around the world, creating opportunities for me to travel to cities outside America that really surprised me, speaking about the 80s. So I use that as an opportunity to bring my work and just talk about my experience. And many looked at it as fashion, as poses, but for me, it was a lot deeper than that. Oftentimes, when I would do shows in different countries, even here, I would break down and cry because so many people weren't here anymore. These guys, I had to get off that. So some of my influences are right here. Ricky Powell, I'm not sure if you know him, but Ricky Powell had a book out back in the days called The Rickster, and he really inspired me a lot because he was one of the first ones to do a book. I admired him so much. I remember the New York Times used to write about him, and I said, I want to be like Ricky. What Ricky is doing, I want to do. So he was a great inspiration to me. Of course, everyone knows the great Louis Mendez. He's been an uncle to me over the many years, a good friend. So, in photography, you have to have a support system, those that are with you. Terrence Jennings, a good friend of mine, he's one of my assistants in all of my jobs. He supported me in so many ways. So every photographer needs that foundation and that friendship. One of the great joys of being a photographer is meeting new people. So this photograph was taken last year, and all it is just people who came to one of my talks. And one of the joys is I have an opportunity to meet people. One of my regrets when I was in the Army was we didn't communicate with each other. It was a missed opportunity. In the Army, you have people from all over the country. All these different people, the North, the South, the West Coast. I felt that it was an opportunity to make a difference in the world if soldiers had an opportunity to communicate with each other, and it was a lost opportunity. So when I came home to the States, I wanted to use the language of photography to bring people together. And now at this stage of my career and having these opportunities to be in front of you today, I have an opportunity to bring people together and have conversations. So I want to present this image because it's at my opening, and it's a shot taken when the show was closing, but it just represents the new people in which I'm meeting in life because of the beauty of photography. So photography has allowed me to meet so many wonderful people in this course of life. More young people I met at one of my presentations, people I never even met before. They might have came in contact with me on social media, but it's creating friendships and necessary conversations that we need to make this world a better place, because my objective right now is to make the world a better place for the children. It's all about the children. It's not about me. I think that the vision I have is for a reason to use my voice in these critical times to bring people together. And again, photography is that universal language that we need right now. I always say in my lectures that all I've known is war all my life. And it's something about the images of war that have always troubled me. And here it is, 2018, we're still dealing with wars and rumors of war. And we can't let that go. I salute the war photographers that go in harm's way, and they show us images to remind us of pain and suffering. So I feel a great sense of obligation right now to use my voice in every chance I get to make a difference in this world. Again, my social media feed allows me to just do that. I go on Instagram each day, and I think about what can I do to provoke thought and to make people think about things. What can I do to help heal the world? It's at my fingertips. So I'm just striving now to do whatever I can in my power to just bring peace into a world of so much hate. My career doesn't really mean anything. It's not about me. It's just about really the children and trying to make a better world for them so they don't have to see all of what I had to see, all the war. But tragically, they're growing up war. You know, the whole post-9/11 generation, wars are still going on. I'm looking at what's going on in Yemen, Syria. I'm looking at the effects of Vietnam to this very day. Some of the most horrific images I've seen weren't from the 1960s, but it's the effects of Agent Orange today. You know, so there's so much work that has to be done. So I'm going to end on that note, and I'm going to take your questions down. I'm in a better zone right now because I had to find my balance. But as I elevated from that caterpillar now, I'm developing wings. I haven't yet flown, despite what some may feel. I'm still developing it right now. So there's a lot of growth that has to take place at this moment. But I'm going to take your questions right now. Thank you all for coming out. It means a whole lot to me. Once this ends, I will step outside and answer your questions more comfortably. Because I'm not used to being on the stage. It's something about that street corner that I like. So when I get off here and get on the street corner, I want to be in my zone. So I'm going to take your questions right now. I'm going to stand up.
Really quick, we're going to pass the microphone around because we're recording, so just don't ask your question until you have a microphone in your hand, okay? Jamel, you can point to who you want to go, okay?
Yes.
Questions?
Hello and thank you.
Thank you.
In your earlier years when you were photographing, were you aware of the significance of the images you were capturing?
I really wasn't at that time. When I first started, it was just about having something, having a hobby. And that meant a lot to me, you know, having a voice and a vision. But the clarity didn't come until really later on. When I came home from the Army, that's when it became more clearer to me that I needed to use this camera as a compass and as a recorder to make my community a better place. So it would take years, at the age of 20. Yes.
Really great talk. Do you have any thoughts on how now in this country we're kind of becoming separated? I think back in the day it was a clear message, no blacks allowed. That message is not here anymore. But I think those sentiments and emotions exist in people. I live in suburbia, and when I become close to people, I still hear the N-word. I still hear, you Muslims. I still hear the Mexicans. So how do we take a compassionate approach with photography towards such neighbors? I mean, at the end of the day, they're my neighbors. I can't hate them. So what's your thought on that?
I think it's important that that's when the role of the photographer comes in play, and also the writers and the creative community. It's something about the language of art in general, not just photography, but the artists. The artists have a responsibility to use their talent to address some of these issues. So we need to do exhibitions that are provocative, that engage. You know, what I strive to do is create exhibitions that show honor and dignity, to help to break down those stereotypes. So I think as artists, we have to use our craft to address these issues, to have exhibitions and have artists talk, to have open conversations of why these situations are going on. So that's how I feel about that right now. Every show I do now and every post I do is to help to start conversations. It could be very controversial, but we need to have conversations to break things down, because a lot of times what we see, it's miseducation. We're being misinformed. There's a lot of visual poison out there, so much. But we have, as artists, we have to balance out that visual poison with some visual positivity. Questions? Wow, no more questions. But it's just so much work that has to be done right now. And once again, I'm very grateful for Photoville, because Photoville is giving a platform for artists to come together as a community. And we need that more now than ever before. There's a great divide, and images of this needs to be shown around the world, how photography is bringing people together. So I'm just striving to do my part right now. I have a lot of work to do. I'm still young, and there's a lot of work that needs to be done right now. I'm very troubled by so much around me, poverty and homelessness. So in looking at the work of Gordon Parks and how he used the camera as a choice of weapons and how he used it to address these different issues, I'm striving now to do the best in which I can, but more importantly, to teach young people the power of photography in hopes that they can carry the baton for the next generation. But I thank you. Oh, yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm a similar age group than you, and I found that Life was such a great magazine to inspire me to know about the world.
Yes.
Because it was in print and it was tangible. And I was wondering if you think that as a photographer and other photographers of your caliber would be interested in trying to get print photography back in the realm of American life and the world view again.
That's a great point. And it's something when I thought about Life magazine. Life magazine was like our internet back in the days. You know, it's through Life magazine we gained exposure to a larger world. What I'm striving to do and working in conjunction with other photographers is just doing book collaborations. There's something about those books, those coffee table books, that we need to put together with scholars to help to keep that going. The magazines are not doing that well today because of the media, the internet, but I think we need those books back. You know, books, and we need exhibitions. You know, but I'm a firm believer of books. That's why one of the things I try to do is produce a lot of books. I have 8 out right now, and I want to keep pumping them because it's a lot of information in my book. So we need more in collaborations. Yes.
Okay, I have a question.
Yes. Okay.
What projects are you presently working on, and what kind of projects do you wish to work on in the future?
Well, one of the main projects I'm working on right now is a book called Honor and Dignity. You know, so I'm developing it right now. I'm gathering up a lot of my photographs that represent pride and dignity, and that means a lot to me because that book will serve as a form of visual medicine, something that can inspire young people. I have hopes to do movies. I want to address the Vietnam War from my perspective, and that would mean a lot to me. I want to bring my images to life. Even the book A Time Before Crack, I would love to bring that to life to help people really understand how life was before the crack epidemic, to understand what it was like for soldiers coming back from Vietnam in the 1970s, to understand the families that we once had. So that would be one of the most important projects that I can do right now, A Time Before Crack. So if all goes well, you know, it'll happen. But I thank you for that question. Yes.
So, it's a really loud mic. You mentioned about the internet and perhaps these tangible books. How do you see the internet as giving us media, as in documenting literally everything we see, versus content, where I feel like a lot of your work is bringing heavy on the content, and it's not, it is documentation, but it even has something further in. And do you think there's a kind of balance with when everyone is recording everything at all, are we losing content? Are we getting, we are getting more documentation, which is nice, but how do you feel about just those two things?
I think it's all a matter of interpretation because what I'm learning right now, I'm seeing so much, and I'm being so informed right now. But just going through my Instagram feed, it's a lot of content out there, but it's enriching to me. I try to go for the good stuff that feeds my brain, and it's constant. I mean, it's a lot out there. It's so much. What it does for me, I don't go outside as much because back in the days, I would go on the street and I would search for a lot of it, but it's all on the internet right now. But I appreciate it because I'm looking at things from different people's eyes. And everyone has a camera and the ability to record, and I'm taking it all, and I really appreciate that. There's no doubt about it. It's a lot out there, things I just didn't know from different perspectives. It may not even be a good image or story, but it's still informing me of different things that are going on right now. So I embrace it all. I hear a lot of debate about it being too much, too many photographers, too many photographs, but I'm just happy that people are recording their lives right now. But I thank you all for coming out, and I always end in saying that the harvest is ripe, but the labors are few. There's so much work that needs to be done right now, and I think that we all have the ability to make a world a better place. So if we could depart with that. If I didn't say anything of any great substance, that means a lot to me. The harvest is ripe, but the labors are few. And let's go out there and try to make the world a better place because we have to. It's just too much war and suffering going on right now, and things are getting worse by each day. So it's going to take the creative community to raise their voices and bring change in this world right now so we can all make a difference. But I thank you. If you want to continue this conversation, you can reach out to me on Instagram or meet me outside. Speaking in these platforms are no longer really comfortable with me anymore. I'm a hands-on personal person where I could really give you my heart and soul, but hopefully something was imparted here. If you go to my Facebook feed, there's a lot of music there. It helps you to better understand my journey. My Facebook feed is very important. My lack of a better word, my support page, because there's a lot of information there which I want to get out of my system. There's documentaries on the war, and it's just my way of getting this poison out. Not even poison, but these images that have been in my body for so long. I just have to purge that and share that in hopes that it can spark conversation to help me better understand the things that I've seen. But I thank you all for coming out. And once again, I'm not going to leave until I answer every question outside of if there are any. And I appreciate you all. And I appreciate you, Laura and Jordan, for providing me with the stage. Thank you.
Thank you.